What can cause attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD? If you or your child has been struggling with this condition, then you may have been wondering the answer to that very question. If that sounds familiar, then you are in the right place because I'm here to answer that question in today's video. So let's get started. Hi, I'm Dr. Kelly Shockley, Doctor of Cause, Chiropractic, board certified in sports medicine, and specialized in clinical nutrition. In this video, we're going to go over what the latest research suggests that actually provokes or creates the situation where ADHD can be a reality. Then we're going to cover the number one lie you are being told about this condition. Now, this is a controversial topic, but you need to know the reality. And finally, I will be sharing with you the best way to optimize your health or even your child's health utilizing a behind the closed doors method that your doctor just simply won't mention. Let's get started. All right, so what is it that research is showing is potentially related to why people end up struggling with this condition, ADHD? Well, the very first one has to deal with what the actual anatomy of the brain looks like. Well, the first thing that they're finding is that the anatomy and the overall function of the brain with people who suffer from ADHD tends to be a little bit different than somebody who's not dealing with those conditions. What they are finding is that people who are struggling with ADHD seem to have a lower level of activity compared to, a normal functioning brain in the areas specifically that control focus and attention. Another point that research is suggesting is that this seems to be a condition that might run in the family. So if there is a child who generally is going to be diagnosed more easily than an adult, if a child ends up showing these types of behaviors and ends up with a diagnosis of ADHD, it is more than likely a true reality that one of the parents, or maybe even both, are also dealing with this, but through the years of life have figured out some sense of coping mechanism to make it through their day-to-day. Another significant factor that can trigger more ADHD-like symptoms would be a concussion or an even more serious head injury or traumatic brain injury. They're finding that there are potential lasting effects as a result of having had that injury. So that's something that if it's in the history of your child or yourself, even multiple concussions, even if they're mild and you didn't actually lose consciousness, if you're struggling with focus and concentration and a multitude of other tasks around just how a brain should be operating, that might be something that triggered this alternate function happening within your brain compared to normal. Another detail that science is believing is leading more kids to being diagnosed with ADHD is a premature birth. And along those same lines of the developing fetus, they are very strong in their thoughts on that prenatal or the fetal exposure to noxious substances like nicotine and alcohol, other recreational drugs, all that can be challenging the very development of the brain while the child is in the womb. Now, before I get into the number one biggest lie you're being told about this condition, I just want to give you the friendly reminder to click that subscribe button down below, turn the notifications on. That way you don't miss out on a future episode. You guys, I am regularly creating content around brain health and how to improve function, whether it's focus, concentration, memory, just mental clarity, you name it. I am regularly producing content for you so that you can take back control of your health and live a much higher quality of life. So again, just click the subscribe button. Don't forget to like the video and turn your notifications on. Awesome. So what is the number one biggest lie you're being told about ADHD and what may have actually precipitated this in your life? Has everything to do with toxins in the environment, what you're actually consuming food-wise, and just other lifestyle types of variables. Now, they're not completely negating it. They're just saying there's little to no evidence and that this being part of what precipitates this reality for you or your child is extremely rare. Now, I have helped many kids within my office deal with ADHD, even adults deal with ADHD, and whether or not what we found through comprehensive testing I do in this office is the true underlying cause of why they're dealing with ADHD, I can tell you for a fact what I just mentioned, how you're eating, the world you're living in, other lifestyle variables, very much so influence how your brain functions, which in turn, if it's not functioning the way it should be, lack of focus, lack of concentration, issues with sleep, issues with mental clarity and memory, mood regulation, all of these types of symptoms come from a brain that is not functioning as it should be. One of the areas I want to focus in most with you right in this moment is food, because it's something you have to do every single day. And believe it or not, if you have desire to improve this condition, then this is something that is very much in your control. Okay. One of the biggest factors that is going to challenge the level of health of your brain is eating too much sugar. Okay. It is in everything. Yes, I know it's a hard one to get rid of because it is the most addictive substance known to man. They say it's 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So cut yourself a little bit of slack if you are not being able to get rid of it, but let it be a motivator in knowing that it really is altering how your brain functions. See, sugar is very pro-inflammatory. And what you need to know about this is when you eat it, it's kind of like it makes your brain ignite. It goes on fire. It's not igniting it in a healthy manner. It's like dealing with all the fires we have in our country right now. Your brain cannot function if it is on fire, right? No, there's nothing that it can do properly if it's on fire and it's inflamed. So one of the foods that kids specifically, when you look at the foods that are targeted to them, one of the ingredients you will find all throughout all of them, even in the least suspecting places, is sugar. I encourage you to really try to start reducing the amount that you are intaking, because this is one of the best types of foods or ingredients to promote a brain on fire. And if it's on fire, like I said, there is no way you're going to be able to focus or concentrate. It's not just that sugar makes kids really hyper or maybe gives you even a little bit of a buzz before you crash right off of it. It's more of what is happening beneath the surface and more specifically in your brain. So sugar is a big, big one. One of the other food additives that is semi-controversial, there is some credible research around it, is all of the food dyes. And who, again, is targeted most heavily by our food, advertising agencies, all the stuff that goes into food, guys, holy cow. The group that is targeted most heavily with food dyes are our kids. Their brains, think of it this way, like your brain is highly susceptible to the world that you live in and the world around it. You do have a protective barrier that's supposed to not allow any of these offensive substances into the brain and have the brain actually be directly exposed. However, when you're living in a world that is incredibly toxic and there's high levels of stress and there's a lot of sugar in our food, we know that this same type of barrier that is in the gut supposed to be protecting us and not allowing any harmful substances into our bloodstream, which then would allow it to reach the brain. It's not functioning the way that it should. There is the research says 80% of Americans, including kids, that have guts that are not functioning the way they should and are allowing substances that are harmful to us to be introduced into the bloodstream. Well, if that barrier is not working correctly, there is no way that the barrier that protects your brain is working correctly either. We've seen a lot more proof of this in the last 5 years as we're researching this connection between the brain and the gut specifically. So food dyes have no business being in our food. And in fact, the equivalent of the FDA over in Europe has banned them because there are so many negative health effects. And guess what? All have to do with your brain function that comes as a result of consuming or being exposed to those harmful substances. Guess what? When it's brain symptoms, it has everything to do with behaviors. I mean, do you have a kiddo who is just kind of all over the map and hard to control, doesn't listen, can't cooperate very well, doesn't follow direction very well? Maybe it's not that they're a difficult kid. Maybe there's different things being introduced unknowingly to you into their bodies that are challenging the very function of the brain. And if you're the adult who has ADHD, well, while your brain should have been fully developed around the age of 23, and should have a little bit more tolerance, it's not to say that it can't be affected by these things either. So staying away from food dyes, minimizing the amount of sugars is something that is within your control and can help you dramatically. I'm really curious to hear from you if you've noticed if either of these factors do in fact actually make your ADHD symptoms worse. So just comment your response down below and let me hear from you. Are you ready to know how to optimize you or your child's health so that you don't have to deal with these nagging, very disruptive, very challenging and difficult symptoms of ADHD? I cannot wait to tell you. So we're going to jump right on into this. Something, if you've been following me for a while, and my patients know me for this for a fact, is that one of my favorite phrases to say is, if you're not testing, then you're guessing. Now, what in the world do I mean by this? I don't mean the type of testing that your MD would do, because they're not allowed to do all the type of testing that we have available to us because of being within the standard of care and having to deal with insurance. Sadly enough, insurance kind of is a dictator of what we're allowed to do. I digress. We don't need to get into that. The bigger thing is to fully understand why somebody is feeling the way that they do. You have to be able to evaluate your whole health, because just where we have symptoms occurring, like lack of focus and concentration, doesn't mean always that that's the area where those symptoms are coming from. Ultimately, what I'm saying is, in order to understand what has actually truly caused your ADHD, we have to be able to ask the body several different types of questions to evaluate what's not working correctly, what have you been exposed to, what is, different nutrient imbalances or deficiencies that might exist, to be able to understand why you specifically are dealing with these symptoms. Because guess what? Everybody is dealing with ADHD for a different reason. There are some common denominators, absolutely. But each one of you is unique in your own makeup and what you've been exposed to, how your life works. All of those factors combined gives us more true understanding of what's not working correctly in your body right now that provoked these symptoms of ADHD to begin in the first place. Now, to drive this point home, I want to share a story about one of my young patients. He came to me, this has been a couple of years ago, dealing with ADHD and dysphagia and some other very interesting psychological, behavioral types of challenges. And his parents really, really, really did not want to have to put him on any type of medication, but also wanted him to be able to learn and be able to go to school normally and function like a normal 7-year-old kid. So we started with just some simple testing to see what's going on. And one of the most significant factors that we found was through hair analysis. Now, I run hair analysis on my patients all the time. It's a different type of hair analysis than like DNA type testing or looking for drugs, not that type of hair analysis whatsoever. We actually collect enough hair closest to your scalp, because that gives us the most recent information about the body, that is. And then we burn it and we test what remains in the ash. One of the very key things that I look for in your hair analysis is heavy metal exposure. And then I also am looking for all of your essential elements. So your macro and your micro minerals, okay, all of your electrolytes, and then minerals, which are your essential elements that are critically needed for every single function in the body. Now here, let me pull up this data real quick. Now I have young Adam's hair analysis results right in front of me. And I just want to share with you what was alarming when it came back, but also not a surprise to me because I do this all the time. I tested for the heavy metals, as I was mentioning, and I'm just going to share with you what came back actually high. He had high levels of aluminum, antimony, arsenic, barium, thorium, and also titanium. Now, where is he being exposed, or why do you think he has these heavy metals being eliminated from his system? They're in everything. They're in our air, they're in our water, they get into our food supply, they're in pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, all of the different cleaning supplies and hygiene products, unfortunately, are sources of exposure. But I want to share with you a little bit specifically about aluminum. Any amount of aluminum in the body is too much. And even the American Medical Association has said that they believe having too much aluminum in your system is one of the factors that points you in the direction of dementia and Alzheimer's. It's very detrimental for normal brain function. So just to hone in on aluminum itself, other things that we've been taught that are normal and convenient and it's just part of our normal day-to-day is something like an antiperspirant. Now, obviously, Adam's not using an antiperspirant. He's only 7 years old. But my other patients, my adults who come back and they test for high levels of aluminum, this is something everybody seems to be using, though is a bit more movement in going towards natural deodorants. But an antiperspirant, the way it works, the way that those keep you from sweating is aluminum, and they clog your pores so that you can't sweat. Well, that'd be fine and dandy if your body didn't actually absorb it, but unfortunately, your body totally absorbs it. And it's been associated with breast cancer, because it's right there. And then very much so, anything and everything related to normal brain function not existing, okay? Another huge source of exposure for aluminum is aluminum foil and cooking in it. We're not meant to be exposed to these heavy metals in high quantities. And guess what happens when you heat up food in aluminum foil? That aluminum leaches into the meat and it goes up by like 400 or 500%. Insane, okay? So in our family and what I tell my patients, we don't use aluminum foil. We will use unbleached parchment paper. I mean, it's not going to fold itself up as, nice and neat and without using some sort of string, maybe. But it works just as effectively for helping you heat your food and locking moisture in without actually exposing you to the heavy metals. Another really people don't have awareness around this exposure of aluminum would be all of your antacids. So if you have a little bit of reflux or indigestion as an adult dealing with ADHD and you're popping antacids all the time to try to calm that down, you are exposing yourself to more aluminum just by taking those antacids as well. And there's several other places, but the point in me sharing this with you is that I see this all the time in my patients with ADHD. Now, I know what the research and the science wants to say is that, it's rare. It's not something that actually happens. We don't have a whole lot of data on that. Ultimately, I see it, okay? And if we really want to make progress like we did with Adam, obviously, we're not going to just focus in on the aluminum either. He had other heavy metals, but we have to deal with whatever other nutrient imbalances and deficiencies that were there, or other systems that are not behaving the way that it should, like a gut that's not working properly. We have to treat you as a whole. And these are absolute factors that are going to challenge the body to be able to function normally. So in order to really understand and address what caused your ADHD or why you're dealing with the symptoms you have to look at you as a whole. If you're not testing, you're guessing. But it also takes proper and comprehensive testing to know all of the right answers. Now, we're going to delve into that in a different video as well, coming up of how can you actually do this. But I want to focus in on the food, because the food is the number one thing that you're doing that's challenging the system more than likely. You're either building your brain health up with every bite you take, or you're slowly destroying it with every bite that you take. And if you're sitting there going okay, I know sugars and food dyes, but I still don't understand what eating for brain health and proper brain function looks like, don't even worry about it. Because guess what? Right down in the description below this video, I have for you a free Eat Your Way to Better Brain Health meal plan that all you have to do is click on the description, make it expand, scroll down to where you see the Eat Your Way to Better Brain Health meal plan. Click on that. That's going to give you an entire week worth of brain healthy recipes. And they're super easy to make. They don't take a ton of time. I've included your grocery list, so you really don't have to think much of it. And then I laid out a plan for you. Now, I'm super busy. I don't have much time to just sit in the kitchen and cook every single day. And I don't expect that you do either. So here's the cool thing about how I designed this meal plan. You don't have to be in the kitchen every single day. I do a lot of what I call in my family planned overs, because let's face it, when you have kids, you're busy. When you are a single mom or even just a parent in general, you're super busy. When you're a working parent, you're even that much more busy. I get it. Life is intense and it's incredibly important for us to be eating healthy, but we also need to be thoughtful of time. So we do planned overs in our family, and that is what you see in this meal plan that is unlike other meal plans out there. You do not have to cook every single day, every single meal. So just again, if you want to start eating your way to better brain health and see how that works for decreasing focus issues and concentration issues and anything else that seems to be something you experience in relationship to your ADHD, just find that link down below in the description. And I am so excited to have you get started. Thank you for being here. I look forward to seeing you on a future episode. Here's to being healthy. God bless.